everyone.
Good morning, Bart. It is time for your weekly visit. And uh, Burned, I don't know if you've been looking in the Twitch pitch, but our discussion about uh, Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Union, and the thought from Bart, or the thought from a Burned about Jim Curtin. I will start things off with this, and I do have some refereeing things that I wanted to get into with you about plus news on Arsenal. Burns says if Jim Curtin ever became men's national team coach, we would have to listen to his BS, whining, etc. in the press conferences all the time. Plus, you get the whole USMNT echo chamber about that. It would be unbearable. Your thoughts as if Soccer for USPOD had to address this as a lightning round breaking news kind of a thing? What's your thought with what Burns says this morning?
Yeah, I have not been on the Jim Curtin to the USMNT wagon. I think he still has a lot to learn as a manager. I think he's coached Philadelphia very well, but I think there's a difference between being a coach and getting tactics right, and even to an extent getting player personnel choices right and managing a team and a program.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I will absolutely say that I am colored by the fact that he clearly hates Atlanta for being, a soccer city, and clearly is just jealous of the environment that we're able to create here. He clearly sees us as a threat to his team because we actually try to play soccer on occasion, which is vastly different compared to what he views his role of his teams. I think that's my biggest thing is why I don't want him for the USMNT. I at least think that Jesse Marsh has an approach that is a style of soccer, whereas Jim Curtin's style is to not play soccer most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I personally do not want that. We are not underdogs, the USMNT. I know people like to think we are, but we are trying to compete at the highest level. And I don't think Jim Curtin is truly a manager who can take teams to the highest level consistently.
Plucky upstarts, the U.S.
Yeah, you can only be a plucky upstart so long. And I think that's the problem they're facing now is they're no longer plucky upstarts. People go, yeah, they're good. Mm-hmm. So you have to, you personally are now making changes to the way that you play to combat that. And also, it seems like he was only good because of Andre Blake, but that's a discussion for another day.
Coco, thoughts on the next USMNT coaches? Looking at the current pool of U.S. coaches, time to look outside the U.S. for a coach. It's not criminal to have a non-American as a coach.
Well, I mean, we've had non-Americans as coaches. I think that's the thing is the Bruce Arena to Bob Bradley handoff was unique. That was the first time that we've had actually 3 American coaches in a row. When you include the man who should not be named because he couldn't win a game in '98. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking outside. I think we should be looking outside because I think a lot of times we feel like the USMNT manager has to understand the U.S. soccer cultural landscape. And I do think to some extent that is still valid. But you can understand it without having to be fully engrossed in it. And that's also why you have a USMNT general manager, maybe, and a sporting director, which, there have been some updates on how that is actually going to be divvied out. It seems like the sporting director will have 2 sporting directors. Mm-hmm. It seems like now from U.S. Soccer, they've kind of hinted at the sporting director may include just the overarching person who's in charge of the actual play, and then they'll have an administrative person who's in charge of all of the referee and coaching development. We've talked about that before, John. It seems like a lot of the candidates don't necessarily want to do all of the job. They want to do the fun part of the job, which I understand.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think that looking outside of the U.S. market, or at least outside of Americans, is perfectly okay. I do think that there are a couple of Americans who would be very good USMNT coaches. I think David Wagner is one that I would definitely be looking at because I think he's proven to be a successful enough manager for a long enough time, playing multiple different styles and playing with different types of clubs, that I think he might provide us a more mature approach to how we play soccer and how things are taken seriously as we lead up to probably the second most important moment in U.S. soccer history after the '94 World Cup.
Well, and if you look at what David Wagner did at Huddersfield and was able to, with the resources or lack thereof, depending on your perspective, what he was able to do with a Huddersfield club in the championship and have them go through the promotion playoff and be in the Premier League for more than just a season, and dealing with the financials or lack thereof that Huddersfield didn't have, it's proven to me at least that David Wagner knows how to get a team to a certain level from a financial aspect. He doesn't have to worry about that from a national team perspective, but he can come up with a system and players that could get you down the right path and keep you involved in a certain situation. In his chance at Huddersfield, it was staying up. With the national team, it would be being competitive, chasing after a semifinal in 2026. So I see your point there about David Wagner.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only one that I can really think of right now that I go, yeah, that guy. But I do think that we should be looking at the whole world when it comes to who are the best managerial choices, because as JT Batson said this past week, as Cindy Parlow-Cohen has said, there are not as many financial restrictions on that position that we thought they would be, right? I think it's very fair to say that Greg Berhalter kind of tapped what we thought we could do at 1.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And they have said that despite, a nonprofit losing money, which, is a different type of nonprofits lose money. Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
They're not supposed to make a profit. And if they do, there's very strict limitations on that. So, you look at US soccer losing money. Well, that's the point. That's what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the financial restrictions I think we thought we were going to have, JT Batson and Cindy Parlow-Cohen said probably won't have. And that's great. I mean, I still think there will be a number that they won't go over.
Right.
But it does seem like they're willing to push the limits to make sure they get the best coach that they think they can get for a very pivotal cycle. This cycle as a whole may be more important than '94, but I think '94 as a moment was more important than what 2026 will be.
No doubt. When you were, if you were Tim Ream and Christian Pulisic last week, you're obviously going to get asked about 3GB. Tim Ream, quote, when he was asked if he would like to see US Soccer rehire Greg Berhalter, quote, "I just think for us players, bringing him back is a familiarity. It's the togetherness that he brought to the team after it was very much kind of sporadic and fractured when he first came in. And it was a big transition with a lot of new guys coming into the program. I think he did a fantastic job in that aspect, and he laid a very good foundation for the team. Whether he comes back or not, for us as players, it's not something that we really worry about or are concerned about because it's not our job to hire for that position. If they bring him back, obviously we'll continue to work under him. If they don't, we'll continue to work under somebody else. And that's the nature of what we do as players. That's the nature of sports. Sometimes there's continuity. Sometimes there's change, and we'll roll with whatever happens." Christian Pulisic, for those who missed it, referred to Berhalter Reina as childish. And in his quote, in his interview, seemed to back a possible rehiring of Berhalter in his interview with Graham Hunter. What did you think about those two interviews?
Well, I do think that sometimes I speak of this as someone who was a player, that the thought of a new coach is less enticing than keeping the guy you had. So I understand that. I think it's very clear. It's very clear that the players did enjoy playing under Greg Berhalter. I think something that we've kind of felt is that he has built a good culture within the team. I don't think that Berhalter has to be the person to continue that. I also don't think it would be a smart move to, after 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long it's going to be, to put Greg Berhalter back in this position. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, the players get their voice does matter. So I think that is important to consider. But I think what I'm hearing from them is they liked the way that Berhalter set up the team from the clubhouse to the pitch. And I think if you're listening from US Soccer standpoint, you need to find someone who has that ability to set up a good, strong brotherhood, as Christian Pulisic called it, and also plays in a very similar way that Berhalter played. I think that's, to me, the most important thing, is that you're continuing the tactical identity that Berhalter has created, because that is something that U.S. soccer needs to focus from top down, is how do we emphasize ball playing abilities? How do we emphasize the desire to want to dominate the game with the ball? That's why I'm not a huge fan of Marsh, not a huge fan of Curtin. I know Wagner is not the most best example for that, but I think he is still a guy who would rather have the ball than not. And so that's kind of where I'm looking at, is I think what they're saying is they liked what Greg kind of helped start. And DM Tim, I think that there is definitely I think Greg possibly might be better suited for kind of the director role of setting the tone of, I don't know if it'll fully include the women's side. I'm not quite sure how they've spoken that, or how they've shaken that out. But I think if he were the guy setting the tone top to bottom for the USMNT program, that might not be the worst thing. Because again, I think his vision, and I've always felt this way about Greg, I think he kind of gets to the Plato form of soccer, the shadow in the cave. He thinks of things of in their most perfect form. That doesn't always work when you're managing a team, and he did change his tactics a little bit, but his philosophy and his system were still very much in place. So I think if you moved Greg into a more director position, then he would be able to continue making his vision happen, which I don't think was an incorrect vision for U.S. soccer. I don't think Stewart and Berhalter were on the wrong track. Like, I think they were definitely going in the right direction of, we need to emphasize playing with the ball. We need to emphasize positional play. I don't necessarily think they got it right all the time, but no one does. But I think the overall vision was correct.
When you look at the national team, a couple of things quickly. Starting 11 is out for the U20s in their friendly in Marbella against France at the top of the hour, preparation for the U20 World Cup this summer in Indonesia. Youth national team comes out with Slanina, Gomez, Paxton Aronson, Paredes, Diego Luna, and Pukstas as featured starters. Your starting 11 in Marbella: Slanina for Kronos, Sullivan, Paredes, Thomas Williams. Mauricio Cuevas is your captain. Alvarado, Paxton Aronson, Joe Gomez, Diego Luna, and Pukstas is your starting 11 for France. When you
a lot of familiar names from the U20 CONCACAF Championship, so that's good to see.
Yeah. So when you look at U20 kicking the tires here for a couple of matches, other than no one getting injured, what are you looking at from the youth national team here?
I mean, that's really it. These U20 matches are going to be important just to get the guys familiar with each other again, get them on the field together. Hopefully continue what you saw at the U20 championships, which was a team that played fun a lot of times. It took a while to get there. But that was kind of the thing, right? They hadn't really played together a whole lot. So getting this this group together for 3 matches before you go off to Indonesia in 2 months, that is the important thing. So I don't really care what the results are. Obviously, at U20 level, results are rarely the most important thing. But to continue that level of intensity that they played with at the CONCACAF Championship, and also playing with a lot of fun. I mean, they were a fun team to watch. I want to continue to see that.
All right. So then going to the men's national team, starting things off Friday against Grenada, 8:00 kick at Karani James. When you look at this group, obviously it's the same thing. You're looking for continuity. You're looking for nobody getting hurt, specifically Robinson, Miles from a local perspective.
Yep.
No post-game sprints for anybody in any situation like this from Anthony Hudson. When you look at this group, I guess, who is in the Bart Keeler spot shadow for this window when you're looking at folks?
Well, I think there are guys who have a chance to make a great deal of the opportunities they've been given. Alejandro Zendejas is one dude who I think he might get some playing time, a lot of playing time maybe in this Grenada match, because I personally, and obviously I don't know what Anthony Hudson will do. We haven't seen enough of him, but I would not start my best 11 at Grenada. The Grenada match, quite frankly, does not matter. We could, as long as we don't lose that game by 2 too much, we come home and all we need is a draw or don't lose against El Salvador, So for me, as long as you go to Grenada, play well, you're going to get a favorable result, whatever that happens to be. If it's a 1-0 loss, then it's a 1-0 loss. But as long as you play well, that's fine. So I wouldn't put my best 11 out there. So I do think a guy like Zendejas has an opportunity to stake his claim, especially now that you see Tim Weah will not be playing. He had to come out because he got injured over the weekend with Lille. Right. It makes sense for Zendejas to play that right wing position. That's where he has played. He played there in the winter. So I think that's one dude who has an opportunity. I think the guy who replaced Weah technically on the roster, Mihailovic, has a possible opportunity. I have been wanting Mihailovic to be in this U.S. men's national team for a while. I think he is a very quality player. I think we've seen it as he played. Mihailovic is actually the perfect case study of I think there's an incorrect narrative about some USMNT Twitter people. I'm not saying that all of them, but the majority of them who say that European leagues are better or European players are better, and they don't immediately hate every MLS player, because all of us have also been wanting Mihailovic for even when he was in Chicago and Montreal. Like we want the best players possible, and Mihailovic has, had such good success in his career, and he's finally doing well in Netherlands. I'm glad he's here. But those are two guys who I think have an opportunity. I think specifically Zendejas has a big opportunity, and then the next one is who's playing striker, because you have two guys in DK and Pepe. Pepe more so than DK, who were a part of that hat of strikers that people were just pulling names out of that did not get called up to the World Cup.
Right.
So you have two guys. I don't know. I would assume DK will start in Grenada. I have no reason to believe that other than watching the games that I've seen from that field. I think we'll be kicking the ball in the air a lot. Let's just put it that way.
So you need an aircraft carrier like Daryl Deegan.
Yeah. I think, when you look at that field, it needs to be bulldozed, backhoed up, and I think DK is the heavy equipment you bring in for that project.
There you go. Brought to you by the U.S. men's national team, presented by International Harvester.
Yeah.
Burned. Always thankful for Berhalter's approach to the game to play with the ball and how it also trickled down to the youth teams on the men's side. The women need a similar influence because their playing style is still stuck in the last century despite their talent advantage.
Yeah, the women's team would benefit from Berhalter's vision. I truly believe that, because I think Berhalter's tactical approach, theoretical approach maybe, would apply well to this women's national team. You have the best talent in the world. Like 100%. I still think the U.S. as a pool is the most talented pool out there.
Right.
I still I remember Vlatko in NWSL not playing such a basic game, and that's why I'm confused why this U.S. women's national team plays so basic. But I do agree that I think if Berhalter could kind of exercise his vision across the U.S. women's national team, that might be good. And I think overall, like I said, the U.S. soccer style needs to evolve more toward the technical ability rather than just you have to keep the physical ability. That is something that does set us apart from literally every other nation in the world, is our physical and athletic abilities. But how do we also teach the technical side of things?
Can you put your referee jersey on for a couple of questions?
Sure. I got my red card, yellow cards ready to go. I think Mitrovic probably will get another red card in the near future, seeing how he
and
man.
And that was the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about, was when it comes to contact with an official. When was the last time when you were officiating that you had somebody bow up to you to try to kind of bump you along and try to puff out their chest? Has that ever happened to you?
When I was refereeing an adult league match and I gave a guy a red card, so because it was a couple years ago now. But yeah, I mean, it happens in the adult leagues. Luckily, anything on the youth side, they don't really. Now I've had a coach recently, not me personally, but he tried to bow up against another coach and had parents try to peacock, if you will. But
yeah,
on the field, it hasn't happened too much, thankfully.
Well, so when you saw Fulham basically come unglued in the FA Cup, you had a lead. It obviously, Willian was a handball. I mean, he thrusts his right arm out, punched the ball inside the 6. Marco Silva said a magic word to the 4th, apparently. He got a red.
Yeah, that'll get you kicked out.
And then Mitrovic off camera, and they had to literally go back to it after Willian was hot. Obviously it's a red, and that's a penalty, and you're punching it. So Willian gets a red, and then Mitrovic bows up, and it was off camera. They had to go back to it to show Mitrovic basically trying to intimidate an official. At least that's, my take.
Mm-hmm.
Dude's taller than the official, and he's bowing up to him and going after him. I don't know if you saw it live or if you caught up to it, but when you saw that exchange, what's going through your mind as an official when you see Marco Silva going after the 4th, blackjack, bang, here's your ace. Then, Willian, obviously he gets his. Then Mitrovic bows up, and that he's going to be sitting for a while. I mean, that got out of control.
I mean, we all know that every single English referee loves Manchester United. Like, we know that's no, listen, I think the problem is that the referee was totally in the right for the penalty decision he had. Like, it was not just a handball. It was dogged, so red in the box. It's a penalty. Willian is out. Like, these were not controversial. Like, that's what I think I was so shocked at, is that this was not a controversial thing. So, there's always an expected sort of blowback when you give a penalty and a red card. Like, both of those as a whole, you expect some discussion, at least, when you give a red card or when you give a penalty. But again, I could just go back to the fact that, like, as players, what's right and wrong on the field.
Yeah.
Why are we arguing something that was blatantly wrong to that level?
Yeah.
And I'm a little shocked that Mitrovic is going to only get the 3-match ban. I personally would have given him a little bit more. Same
10?
with Silva, because I mean, I think that this because Kebsy, you made a great point. Like, I don't think that Fernandez necessarily shoved a ref. The shove was not as egregious as I think a lot of people are making it out to be, but we're getting to the point where these are starting to be dangerous encounters.
Yeah. And they're becoming more and more commonplace than in the past.
Exactly.
Especially crowding and becoming
the crowding of the official, I like, for some reason, that initiative of trying to stop that has just gone out the window. And it's scary as an official, and it certainly does influence our decision making. It does not allow us to think clearly because we're trying to manage the instance in front of us. It's something that I always try to explain to kids who, if there's a harsh foul on one of their teammates and then, they all rush at me, and I'm like, I can't deal with the player who just committed the foul when you all run at me.
Yeah.
So you have to have a level of objectivity.
Yeah.
While you're out there playing, and just a level of understanding the game as a whole.
Professionalism and decorum are the words that stick in my head.
Right.
And I'm waiting for something more than 3, but I haven't seen anything final come down the pike yet. And Alex is the Newcastle fan, tired of Arsenal and Man U whining about.
Some of us aren't owned by nation states. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. And speaking of your club, the conflicted legacy of Mesut Ozil, time to leave the big stage, retiring at the age of 34. 9 club trophies, 4 FA Cups with Arsenal, La Liga title with Real in 2012, 2014 World Cup winner with Germany, and amazing journey filled with unforgettable moments. Been playing for Besiktas here, career limited with injuries over the last handful of seasons. Fenerbahce, 18 months until last summer. Mesut Ozil, I mean, you want to talk about someone who gives you the extremes of opinions depending on who you're talking about. When you think of Mesut Ozil as a fan of Arsenal, what comes to mind?
He was a very fun player to watch for since he was at Arsenal, the 6 that I think he actually played.
Mhm.
I think the problem that I have is that also kind of coincided with the league performance dropping
Yeah.
from Arsenal. It was
Mhm.
really obviously it's the end of the Arsene Wenger era, and it's the end of our dominance or our hold on as a top 4 club. It's
Mhm.
not his fault, but it is. You said, I think you said the conflicting legacy, and it does feel very conflicting because you had this player who could do just amazingly beautiful things, but also from an Arsenal standpoint, it was not coupled with great league finishes.
Mhm.
I think we won 4 FA Cups during this time.
Yeah.
Like it was the
Well, yeah.
resurgence of that. Um, but he was a special player. He really was. He was weirdly the best representation of what Arsenal was at that point in time that he was playing there. Is a very talented finesse player, a very talented and finesse team that wasn't really able to get the job done when it required a little bit of steel and metal.
Mhm. All right. So I know that I'm keeping you into a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, I got about 5 minutes.
Well, the show's got 3, so you'll be okay. Last question out of the blocks. What was it like in the end zone, seeing 5 put up on Portland?
Oh man, that was a fun game. That was such a fun match. It felt like the old Atlanta United. Just every time we got any sort of run out, it felt like we were going to score.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I still think the best goal we scored was that third goal from that Yakimakis headed home.
Oh.
I think I laughed no fewer than 3 times during that entire sequence. I'm literally laughing. My boyfriend's like, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like laughing. He's excited. I'm like, "This is insane that we're able to do this."
Switch.
Yeah,
Switch.
the Almada escape from pressure after just very coolly he and Lennon and a couple other guys just kind of pass. Almada does a quick little turn, sees Aruju, the long switch, and then Aruju is like, okay, well, we'll do it again. And then the just wonderful layoff for Wiley and a fantastic cross from Wiley. That's the type of cross that as a team. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm gonna open this can of worms on you, John. But it's the type of cross that I know everyone's been wanting to see because we were so used to that type of cross from the Gressel to Joseph thing. The problem is we haven't had a striker making runs like that and also then capable of finishing that. So it is weird how when you get a striker who seems to be A, fully healthy, B, fully fit, and C, fully committed to scoring.
And coming back to play defense.
And seems to be committed on the team doing better rather than himself. It does seem like that. That was a perfect.
That's a personification of it, I think.
Yeah, and it really was. I think we've seen such amazing individual efforts over the past 3 weeks now. Before that, and even during that game, Almada's great efforts, Wiley, fantastic, even Aruju making. He has scored, so there's that. But still, amazing individual play. But it was nice to again see a true team goal that I really don't think we've seen since. I'm trying to think, and I might be wrong, but I think it was and even then it was a lot of individual stuff. But the game winner against Charlotte, I think last year, was a good team-esque goal because it required like multiple passes. But I still think it was good individual moments, not a good team moment. And that to me was the most promising because if we're getting team buildup like that, on top of the just known ability for Almada, for Aruju, I mean, even a guy like Lennon and Wiley on the wings who are able to beat players 1v1.
Andrew Gutman, yeah. With the
then you had Gutman, who is just kind of hanging back, and then all of a sudden he pops up out of nowhere. Like those things combined with the actual ability to play team soccer that's what wins you championships.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
And that to me, with that again, that third goal was the most promising thing to me because I mean, I looked over the second goal, the Almada free kick. I looked over at my boyfriend. I said, I think he's gonna set. Looks like they're setting up the wall. We're setting up our. And I'm like, I think he's gonna try to knock this back post to either Parada or Giakoumakis, and we're gonna head it across. And he takes a shot and it goes in, and I'm like, oh my God. Like no one had words. It was just screaming.
No, yeah, laughter. Right there with you, brother.
I don't know how Mike or Jason actually analyze that. I know Kendra actually has some sort of objectivity, but even Kevin Egan was just I think at that point we were just screaming everything.
Well, you want to know before you go. Here's your answer.
We're in the third of 4 added minutes here in the first half. 1-0 Atlanta United. Ball is spotted square to the post nearest us. It's Almada standing to the left of the ball, and Araújo is to the right of it.
Yeah, it's inside 35, so it's a little more in range. I think Thiago might want this.
Let's see. 7-man wall. Whistle by Uncle. Hands on hips for Almada. He's up to it. He does go for goal. Goal!
There's your short version, courtesy of our friends at 92.9 The Game. Yes.
It really but seriously, it was just so. Oh my goodness.
There
were very few words to use to describe that other than magic.
Yes.
Yes,
we were all laughing. OG was cackling. You got to turn into a real world person.
Yeah, I gotta go, but I appreciate you having me on here this morning.
That's what Wednesdays are for. Soccer for USPOD after Grenada.
We will have one after the El Salvador match. As I said, this Grenada match, the stakes of this are very low.
Yes.
I just want us to play somewhat well, come back home and be able to be in a position to qualify for the Nations League final, which will be in Vegas. And a lot of Canadians are very mad that we get all these finals here in the US. And to them, I say, suck it. But have a venue worth hosting a CONCACAF Champions League or Nations League or whatever final. It's not our fault that y'all can't build stadiums in LA and Vegas like that.
Oh,
do better. You literally anyway, I can't get on this rant because they have been bugging me on the Twitters. They're all upset. I'm like, sorry that we're doing a CONCACAF Nations League final in Vegas. That sounds like a great idea, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're all mad. But anyway, just be in a position to qualify for the finals in Vegas. That's all we need, because that is the expectation that no matter who the coach is, no matter if you have a full-time or interim coach, the expectation should be that the U.S. should be in CONCACAF finals every single time we play.
There you go. Go into the real world. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks, y'all.